All right, everyone. My attempt at going through the 7th grade milestones packet. Question 1, draw arrows. All right, so we're trying to represent -5 and its opposite. Well, if I'm trying to represent -5 and its opposite, I really should have been going to the -5, making an arrow this way, and then making another arrow coming from the other side, right? But this works fine too, because I'm just trying to show that they have a sum of 0. We know clearly -5 plus 5 is 0, and this is that opposite that we were talking about at the beginning of the school year. Okay, question number 2. Hopefully you can see that all right. Same idea here. The hiker climbs up 237 feet, and then he hikes down 237 feet. What is the net change? Net change represents what is the answer of an addition or subtraction problem. And that answer is going to be 0. If I went up 237, I'm going to go down 237. Juan earns $20 mowing lawns. He owes his friend $20. What's the net change? Well, it's the same idea because he's going to be doing $20 for mowing the lawn and then subtracting $20 for owing the friend. So he has a 0 net change. Okay. Here, question 4, which best describes having an opposite of quantities that make 0? So C is the only one that does that because if Melanie deposited $10 in her savings account, deposits mean that she's adding that money. Remember that withdrawals or withdrew is to subtract the money out. So she added $10 in, she took $10 out. That is the net change of 0. For example, if we choose A, which is incorrect, Shauna made 8 cups of soup and divided the soup into 8 containers. She didn't get rid of the soup. The soup still exists, right? But here, in Melanie's case, the money's gone. All right, number 1 on the next section. We had to just do an addition statement and then the overall change. So if I started with carbon as -6 electrons, changing it with protons, which is a +6, we have the addition statement -6 plus 6, which is 0. We can clearly see that the rest of these, some of them will be a net change of 0, some of them will be a net change of something that's different than 0. Clearly oxide here, -10 plus 8, -2. Okay. Problem 2. So we want to write down an equation, and then we want to solve it. So if the temperature started at -2 degrees Celsius, that is the -2. If the temperature rises by 15 degrees, what's the new temperature? Okay, well, I start at -2, and then I rise from that -2, 15, to get 13. Notice how it did not say if the temperature rose to 15 degrees, because that would be a completely different scenario. It says it rises by 15, so we have to go from -2 to 15, which is a net change of 13 degrees. Right. Bank account overdrawn by 60. Overdrawn means negative because you have less money in the account than it says, meaning that you actually took money from the bank in order to take money out, which you cannot do because the bank charges you a lot of money for that, right? So overdrawn by 60, which means her balance is -60. She gets 85 for her birthday and deposits in the account. How much does she have now? Well, my account is going to be positive, but it's not going to be as much positive as you thought because she was -60 originally. -60 plus 85, $25, okay? Number 4 here, so John had a score of -5 and Kamira had a score of 7. When the round ended, they had a complete a problem or a net change of 2, positive 2. What could that represent? Well, the only way to get 2 here is if I add these two numbers, which is sum. It's not difference, it's definitely not absolute value, and it's not sum of the absolute value. Because remember, absolute value is that same number without a negative sign, okay? Moving on. This is going to be a long video, I believe. Okay. Draw a diagram to represent what's happening here. The temperature was -13 degrees, so if I have 0 degrees here, I went down to -13, and then it rose 9 degrees. So it went up 9 degrees from the -13. It did not go to 9 degrees. So remember here, the wording is really important. So what is the new temperature? What is the net change? Now we are at -4 degrees combined. Okay, the seagull, same idea. The seagull is 100 meters above the surface of the ocean. So here's my little ocean, right? 100 meters above, and then the shark was 30 meters below. So what is the distance between both of them? So the distance between both of them is when I add these numbers together without worrying about the sign here, right? So if we're 30 meters below and 100 meters above, that is a distance of 130 because I'm adding those numbers together. Okay, mountains here. Which continent have the largest difference in elevation? Well, you see here, I added the numbers together regardless of the sign to get the total elevation, right? Because one is below sea level and one is way above. So I just added those numbers together. And you can see these are the sums of all 4 numbers. So Asia has the largest and Europe has the smallest difference in elevation. Okay. Problem 4, Tyler has 37 in his bank and writes a check for 87. So he wrote a check for more money than he had, guys. So that's negative. So, and writing a check anyway is a negative. It's a minus sign because I'm getting rid of that money. So $37 he had minus the 87. He now has a negative $57 account balance, which is bad. Okay. Problem 1, now we're just going to write some number lines and find the differences. So remember, on a number line, the first number that pops up is where we go first. So I'm not going to do all of these because you can see them. All right. So here we have 9. So I went right 9 because it's positive. And then I went back 4, negative 4 because it's 4. And the answer to that is 5. You can see all the answer choices there. Okay. Problem 2, kind of the same idea, but I want to rewrite all of these subtraction problems as an addition problem. And how to do that is basically whenever I see the minus sign that links them in the beginning, I'm going to change to a plus. But if the back number was also a negative, that will change it to a plus. So for example, a minus 9 equals 6. Well, I need to change that minus to a plus, but that 9 is still negative. I still have to represent that as a negative number. So this is going to be a plus negative 9 equals 6. And that's how we rewrite these problems from subtraction to addition, because we need it to mean the same thing. We need it to make sense, right? It has to say the same value. Okay? So you can see those there. Now, C, for example, I got a double negative. I don't have to write another negative sign because the double negative cancels out and makes 1 plus. Okay? You see how these other two didn't have a double negative. Okay? How much warmer is 82 degrees than 40 degrees? Well, it's 42 degrees warmer. Because if I was in 82 degree weather and there was a 40 degree weather somewhere else, that's a 42 degree temperature change. Same idea here for the second part. Okay, problem 4. Rewrite each as an addition problem. Okay, we did that too. So I got a double negative here. So it's just 1 plus sign. This is the answer to that, and then we solve it because it wants to solve. You would use a calculator for the solving part. The only difference here is C, how there's only 1 minus sign in between. I have to put a plus sign and then put a negative sign behind it. Okay. Okay. Solve. We're simply just doing this in a calculator. You know, you're going to have your Desmos scientific calculator. You're going to make that happen, right? We're going to work it out. Okay. So we could put it into both. I should have put a mixed number as well. Sorry about that. Okay. So both your answers are there. Please check them. Same here. I just gave you 3 different opportunities. It really would depend on what the milestones had in terms of an answer choice. If you have mixed numbers, the rule of thumb generally is that the answer will be in mixed number form as well. So again, Desmos scientific calculator will do that for you. Okay, which of the fractions are equivalent to negative 3 over 4? This is an interesting problem because not one of them is equivalent. There's a mistake here, right? So negative 3 over 4 means that negative is part of this fraction. This is positive, so it's not that. Negative over a negative cancels, so it's not that either, because that would end up being positive. And these are both some kind of 4 over thirds. So none of these are, right? Not one. So none of them are right. Here, there is a right answer. I'm looking for something that is not equivalent to 5/9. So remember, equivalent means the same, meaning exactly the same. So this is the same because the negatives cancel. This is the same because the negatives cancel. This is the same because the negatives cancel. This isn't the same because these 2 negatives cancel, but that one stays. So this is going to end up being negative 5/9. Okay. Okay. All right. Weather station is at the top of a mountain. It reports that we have currently 0 degrees Celsius, and it's falling at a constant rate per hour. So every hour, we're going down 3 degrees. Okay. If it continues to fall at this rate, what will the temperature be in 5 hours? Well, 5 hours, so 5 times the change of 3 is 15, and it's falling. It's going downhill. All right, so it's going to be negative 15 degrees Celsius because we started at 0. Okay. And if it continues to fall at this rate, what will the temperature be in a half an hour? Well, if it falls 3 degrees in 1 hour, half of that is 3 over 2. All right? So it's going to be negative 3 over 2 degrees, which we would make a decimal because it's just easier. So it would go negative 1.5 degrees every half hour, okay, or in 1 half hour. Okay? Problem 2, car insurance is $720.72 every 6 months. Okay, so we want to see what that's like in 1 month because they want to say, it's asking us what's the monthly change. Okay, now that's interesting. If we pay $720.72 every 6 months, we want to divide that by the months to get one value, and that value is 120.12. That means she pays $120.12 every month, but it wants to be represented as what is in her checking account balance. Basically, because she has to pay that money, it's going to end up being negative. So the correct answer is negative $120.12. This one was a little bit confusing. The oil drill It dug negative 187 and 1/5 feet after 1 day of continuous use. 1 day. What is the drill's digging rate in feet per hour? Okay, because it says continuous use, I have to assume that it's asking us or telling us that the oil rig or the oil drill goes all day long, from like all day, like 24 hours. So I divided the negative 187 1/5 by 24, and then I got these results, which is the correct answer. So this is how much it's digging in feet per hour. Problem number 4, motorboat traveled negative 3.4 miles per hour for 0.75 hours. How far did it go? Okay, so this is incorrect. We don't ever talk about miles per hour in the negative sense because that means you'd be essentially going backwards, but that still doesn't make any sense. So disregard the negative here in terms of the problem. We'll answer it with a negative because that's what it asks for. So we just multiply these numbers together and get negative 2.55 miles. And then a tugboat traveled negative 1.5 miles in 0.3 hours. What was its velocity? Velocity just means we'll multiply these numbers together again. Negative 0.45 miles per hour is the answer. Yeah. So we're good there. Again, we don't have negative miles per hour, but we'll play their game, okay? All right, solve, just basically distribute and solve, use a calculator. Same here, distribute and solve, use a calculator. Yeah. Same two things here. What is the value? If I'm looking for the value, I'm looking for an answer, right? So just make sure you go ahead and do that too. Okay, decimal equivalent. So in the calculator, you would just do old school. You would just do 5 divided by 11, and then it would give you a decimal. Be careful about the bar over top. The bar has to be over the thing that repeats only, all right? So if you did this in the calculator, you would see 45, 45, 45, 45, 45. So the answer is C. This one, be careful. This is just 4 with a bar over the 5. That means the 5 is the only thing repeating here. That's not right, obviously. So C is the correct answer. Same thing with choice D. Just be careful about how you interpret the bar. Okay. Which of these fractions is not equivalent to 0.375? Same idea. I'm really just doing 3 divided by 8 old school, and it's going to give you a decimal. Just look for which one's not that. Okay. What best describes an irrational number? Okay, when you see the word irrational, I want you to think pi and its characteristics. 3.1415, blah, 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 blah. Pi is irrational, and pi is a number that cannot be expressed as the ratio of 2 numbers. Basically, I can't represent pi, the value of pi, by a fraction. Like I couldn't find some number divided by some other number to give me pi. It's impossible, okay? Basically, anything that is like pi in characteristics is irrational, okay? And we'll talk about that a little later if we need to. Okay. All right, problem 1, okay. Sheila made 4 withdrawals of $40 each. Okay, withdrawals means negative. So you're gonna multiply 4 times 40, and that's gonna be 160, but remember it's negative because she withdrew it, okay? Then she made a $156 purchase. Purchase is negative as well, so that is going to be added to the negative version of this. And then she deposited her paycheck of $375. Well, the paycheck is the only thing that's plus here because depositing means plus. So I'm going to add these 3 numbers together, negative 160 plus a negative 156 plus 375, and it's going to give me a positive 59, which is the answer. It is the increase in her pay or in her money. Problem 2. Tara had 1 5/8 pounds of dried apricots. She ate 1/4 of a pound every day for 6 days. How much will she have left? We're going to do a kind of a nasty division problem. After we find out how many total apricots she ate or how much of those apricots she ate in 6 days. So first, we need to multiply 1/4 times 6 because that'll give us the total amount of apricots she ate, which ends up being 6 over 4. Then we can divide the total amount of apricots she had by how many she ate in the 6 days and figure out how much she ate, or how much she had left over. Okay, she had 1 1/12 left over. Okay, so it's a tough problem. First she had to multiply because it was about what's asking. It's asked how much does she have left. Now you could have done 1 5/8 minus 1/4. You could have done it 6 times, right? You could have done 1 5/8 minus 1/4 minus 1/4 minus 1/4 6 times, but that just seems like too much. Okay. Okay. Submarine, it's at 25 meters below sea level. I drew it here. And it's descending. Descending means it's going downhill at a constant rate of 15.5 miles per hour or meters per hour. If it continues at that rate, what will it be after 5.5 hours? So we need to multiply the 15.5 is what its rate is by how long it's doing that for. So 15.5 times 5.5 is some value, which I don't know why I didn't put there. But then I had to subtract the 25 from it because they were already at 25 below. So it started 25 below, and then it went 15.5 down every hour for 5.5 hours. So it wants to know what its elevation, and elevation can be negative, it can be underneath the water, in 5.5 hours. It is going to be negative 110.25 meters below sea level after 5.5 hours, okay? So we kind of had to put those two things together. How far it was started, and then every hour it went down. Okay, Mark's playing video games. Sorry, he's planning to purchase a video game. The video game costs $34.80, and the new controller that he's trying to buy is $45. So far, he's earned 3/4 of all that. So first, we wanted to find out how much total it's going to cost him for both these things, and that's going to be $79.80. So far, he's earned 3/4 of it. So we're going to multiply 3/4 times 79.8. We're going to get 59.85. That's how much money he's already earned. But now we want to know how much more does he need to get? How much money does Mark need to earn? Okay, so he still needs to earn $19.95, and we know that because if the total cost was $79.80, he already earned that. We're going to subtract, and that's how much he needs left over. Okay. All right, this is the second section. This is the gatekeeper 31. What we just did was gatekeeper 30. Okay, I'm going to keep going with them and see what I can do. Okay, equivalency, we're going to distribute the -7 and solve, or simplify, and D is the answer. Same here. Be careful with this negative. We have to distribute this as a -1. All right, and that's going to change the signs. That is the answer there. Problem 3, same thing. The only distributive is the 4 to the x and the 3, and simplify and solve, or simplify. Same here. Be careful here. We have to distribute the -3. The -3 is what distributes. Okay. All right. Okay. Dance team members. This is the expression that represents the situation. What is another way to write this expression? Well, we just distribute it and simplify. Same here. John is going to distribute the 6 to both of these terms and simplify. Nothing else there, really. Okay. Triangle, which has 3 sides. It has 2 sides of length A and B. Okay, so one side is A and the other side is B. The third side is twice the length of A. So twice the length of A means 2A, or 2 times A. Then we have A plus B plus 2A, and it says for us to simplify the expression totally is 3A plus B. That's the final answer, because I have 1A plus 2A. Okay, a triangle is a base length of X and a height of 8. Write an expression to represent the scenario. Okay, so if we know the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2, we know the base is X and the height is 8. So 8X divided by 2. Now, we need to simplify it, and we can simplify the number part of this. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and the answer is 4X. Okay. Okay. The kit has 18 screws, or each kit has 18 screws, and some number of boards. X is the number of boards. There are 6 total sets. Okay, so there's boards and screws. And then there's 192 total of everything. So it asks us what X represents, and X represents the number of boards in one kit, and we know that because 18 represents the number of screws in one kit, because that 6 out here represents how many kits there are. Okay, so C is the total answer there, correct answer there. Okay. Problem number 2, same situation, but I want to find X. We distribute the 6 to both sides, or to both things in the parentheses, and simplify and solve, as you see that I've done here. X is 14, which is B. Okay. Jen is purchasing teacher appreciation gifts for her 4 teachers. She purchases 4 gift cards for $15 each, which is a total of $60, right, that's first, and 4 water bottles for X dollars. Okay, 4X. So 60 plus 4X is going to equal the total amount she paid for the gifts, which is 107. Simplify, solve, combine like terms. Each water bottle, okay, is $11.75. I think what it was is not like a filled water bottle that you'll get from like the cafeteria. I think she meant like a Stanley or something like that, or a knockoff version. It's fine. Ms. Hewin spent $640 to stay in a hotel for 4 nights. Each night she spent X dollars on the hotel room, as well as a $15 parking fee. How much money did the hotel cost per night, excluding the parking fee? So this $15 has nothing to do with the situation. It's just $650 or $640 equals 4X, because she spent for 4 nights. So 4 divided by 4 on both sides. She spent $160 a night. Number line problem. First thing is we have to simplify this. -5 on both sides, divide by 2 on both sides. We don't have to flip the sign because there's no negative. X is going to be less than 3, okay, which is right here for B. Problem 2. Okay. Help service has a yearly fee of $25.50. That's a one-time fee. I know it says yearly, but it's not asking us for multiple years. It's asking us for 1 year. So $25.50 is a one-time fee. The $10.50 per hour or per session is when X comes into play, because it says a $10.50 charge for each help session. Each is the key word here. That means I've got to put an X behind it. And that's going to be less than or equal to 170 because John can only spend 170 for the help, okay? So here's my inequality. I'm going to subtract $25.50 on both sides, then divide by $10.50 on both sides, and we're going to get $13.76 or 13.76 help sessions. But because we're talking about help sessions, we can't have 0.76 of a help session. Now, he doesn't have enough money to round up to the 14, right? Because if it was 14, then it would be fine. But this is a less than or equal to problem. So then he can only have 13 help sessions. Now, he'll have some money left over, but he can't do anything with the other help sessions. Okay, so it's only 13. Jason is training for a marathon. His goal is to run a minimum of 35 miles. Okay, so far he already ran 15 miles. Okay, so he needs 4 more days. He's going to run for 4 more days worth of running to achieve a goal. So they all have 4M, so we know that the 4M has to happen. But the 15 miles he already ran, which means plus because it adds to what he's done, all right? So if I know that it's going to be a plus 15 because he's already done it, he's already accumulated those hours, he's trying to run a minimum. Minimum means I need a greater than or equal to sign. A is my correct answer. All right? Problem 4, which value for X makes the equality true? First step here is -4 on both sides. You can see my work. -4 on both sides. And then we're essentially dividing by -1/5 on both sides. You could have multiplied by -5/1, but this seems a little easier. And the answer is going to be here. Now, the key is I'm dividing or multiplying by a negative sign. The golden rule of inequality says if I divide or multiply by a negative sign, I've got to flip the sign. So this was a less than or equal to sign. Now it's a greater than or equal to sign. Okay, so be careful. D is the correct answer. Okay. Processing machine crushes this many dried fruits in 3/4 of a minute. What's the rate? Okay, to find the rate problem, we have to divide. We're going to take the bigger number and divide it by the smaller number. And that's going to give us 4 1/3. The bigger number divided by the smaller number in rate problems. Okay. All right, pool swimming. Okay, same idea here. In this case, we're going to divide the bigger denominator in 1/12 by 1/5. Okay, because it's leaking at a rate of 1/12 of a gallon every 1/5 of an hour. Okay, so we're really going to be dividing those numbers to see how much it's doing in 1 hour. And so 5/12 is my answer. All right, that's how much it's leaking in 1 hour. Because if it's doing this every 1/5 of an hour, well, there's 5/5. So I would be multiplying this as well. Both work the same. Okay, both work the same way. Okay. 2 cups of milk and for 5 servings. How many cups of milk are needed for 8 servings? Okay, so this is a ratio problem. 2 cups of milk for every 5 servings. 2/5. 2 cups of milk for 5 servings. Has to equal. We don't know how many cups of milk, but we do know the amount of servings for that unknown cups of milk. So 2/5 is going to equal x/8. Butterfly method means we cross multiply. 2 times 8 is 16, and that's going to equal 5 times x. Divide by 5 on both sides, and my answer is 3.2, which equates to 3 1/5 cups. Okay, really rolling here. All right. Ava's family had a $15,000 gallon swimming pool. They start to fill the pool at 8 a.m. and every 15 minutes she records what's happening. Okay, the table shows the first 45 minutes of data. So 1,000 gallons, it took 15 minutes to get there. 2,000 gallons, it took 30 minutes to get there, and so on and so forth. So at what rate in gallons per hour is the swimming pool being filled? All right, well, these are minutes. So I want 1 hour, and 1 hour is 60 minutes. All right. So take a look at the pattern here, guys. Every 15 minutes it's doing what? It's going up 1,000. So this is going to be 4,000 gallons per hour. Because again, 60 minutes is 1 hour. Okay, what's the rate in miles per hour? The rate is the slope. So it's going to be y over x. Or rise over run. So from 0, 0, I went up 2 and right 1. So up 2, right 1. So the rate is 2. Okay. Next, problem 2. This situation, this is a little weird. We typically divide miles by hours. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do 1 divided by 1/3. So we usually do, it's usually miles divided by hours or time. Okay. So really and truly, if we did 1/3 divided by 1, that's not going to work so much. So we're just going to do the miles divided by the hours. So 1 divided by 1/3 is 3. So they all have a common reality here. So in this case, we're going to do miles divided by hours, right? Because miles per hour. And then we'll get 3. Yoga classes and the cost. Which statement correctly represents the rate? B is the answer. It costs $15 for one yoga class. Well, it didn't say that here, but we got to take a look at the rate. For 2 classes, it's $30. For 4 classes, it's $60. 6 for 90. If I divide the y by x, I'm going to get 15, which is the rate. Remember, the rate is going to be y divided by x, or the rise divided by the run. And that's going to be how they work out. So 30 divided by 2, all of these give me 15. So 1 yoga class, and if I continue this pattern, it makes sense, right? Problem 2, I ran in minutes apparently, okay? So it looks like I ran 200 meters in 1 minute. So the constant of proportionality is just a really fancy way of saying slope, which is the rate, okay? So that all mean the same thing, and it's 200. For every 200 miles, for every 200 meters I ran, it took me 1 minute to do so, okay? And it's me. Should say Dr. Dramus, that's rude. Anyway, what are we at? 25 minutes, okay. All right, what is proportional? Remember the 3 rules of being proportional. Rule number 1, it has to go through 0, 0. Rule number 2, has to be straight line. Has to be, has to go, has to be. And then 3, it's y divided by x ratio. Has to be the same number. Okay? So it's C. Paloma earned $36 in 3 hours, and Jenny earned $60 in 5 hours. Okay? The rates are both 12. 36 divided by 3 is 12. 60 divided by 5 is 12. Both are 12. None of these other ones have the same rate, the same ratio. Okay? Problem 2, is the plant growth shown in the graph proportional? The answer is no. It looks like it would go through 0, 0. It does not represent a straight line though, because look at these rates. These 3 dots are really, really in line, and then this dot starts to go crazy. That's not a straight line. It needs to be one continuous straight line for it to be proportional, so it's not linear. Okay, here. Is this proportional? And the answer is no, it's not. So the reason is because in half a day, it's 1/3. In 1 day, which is another half a day added on, it goes up another 1/3. Okay. Well, if it went up here, day 2 is 4/3. Okay. So does that mean it's proportional or not? I think this might be wrong. Let's see. If I had 1/3 and I divided it by 1/2, let's see if there's a mistake here. Right. So let's go. Let's go to mode. Let's go to classic. Let's go to math print. All right. So let's see. 1/3 divided by 1/2. It's a rate of 2/3. Okay. So let's do the next one. 2/3 divided by 1. 2/3. Huh. Okay. Now here's the trick. Let's go. 4/3 divided by 2. Also 2/3. Oh boy, Dr. Dramus. Yes, it is proportional. And it is proportional because it's going to go through 0, 0. Because if I went back a half a day, there'd be no plant height. Because how is a plant going to grow in 0 days? Right? It's not going to be a thing. So yes, it goes through 0, 0. Yes, it's a straight line because they're proportional. So it has to be a straight line. So there is actually proportionality here. All right, select all that represents a proportional relationship. Proportional relationship needs a y-intercept of 0. So that has a y-intercept of 0, we're good. This does not have a y-intercept of 0 because remember, it has to go through 0, 0. Here, also not because that's a y-intercept of 3. Here, this should also be proportional. Why did I select that was not? Because this is y equals 1/3 x. This is also proportional. Oh boy, I must have gone really fast through this page. Okay, and then E is not. Oh, I know what I did. I circled D and E instead of D. The answers are A and D, guys. Hello. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Or my Dr. Dramus talk. Okay. All right. Select the 3 statements that are true. Okay, take a look at this graph. I've got some crazy stuff going on. So A, there is a proportional relationship between the number of peaches and the cost because a line can be drawn passing through the origin and connecting all points. Okay, well, can it? And the answer is yes, it can. Okay? And here's why. If I have the number of peaches, if I don't buy any peaches, I don't have any cost because 0 peaches should cost you $0. Okay? C, the 0.1.75 can be used to represent the unit rate of 75 cents or $75 per peach. That's true because 1 peach is 75 cents. So that can represent the unit rate. And then F, the 0.43 represents 4 peaches at a cost of 3. 4 peaches at $3. All right, a package of dog cookies costs $9.20. So then 2 would cost $18.40 and things like that. And D is the only thing that represents that because we're going to multiply the number of packages times $9.20 to get the total cost. Problem 3. Okay, none of these are true. There's a mistake. These 50s should be 25. I don't know why they changed it, okay? Basically, here's what's going to happen. We don't know the cost of the laptop. So let's make a value for that cost. Let's just say the laptop cost $100, okay? The laptop is on sale for 20% off its original price, which means it's still worth 80% of its original price. We're taking 20% away, which means 80% still exists, because remember that there has to be 100%. Okay, you found a coupon for an additional $25 off the cost. Okay, which of these scenarios represents the cost of the laptop? Well, let's see how much the laptop's gonna cost straight up. If the laptop costs $100, which you created, which is a nice, clean, friendly number. If the laptop costs $100 and it was 20% off, that means we're doing 100 times the quantity of 1 minus 0.2, which is $80. Then there's $25 to get away. So I'm going to subtract 25 from that, and then I'm going to get what here? 55. So the laptop will cost $55. We need to see which one of these choices gives us that same value if I said X was 100, because X represents the missing laptop. Okay, it's none of these, but the closest one is really going to be C. If that was a 25, this would work fine, because that's exactly what we did here. So if you're going to select anything, it'll be C. But remember, the 50 doesn't make sense. It should be 25. I don't know where that 50 came from. All right, cool. All right, let's take a little break here. I'll come up with another video in a little bit.